Today, we will be learning how to make digital baseplate with wax rims in Exocad 3.3. Hey guys, what's going on? We have Johnny here and Dr. Omid, and we have a 95-year-old patient who's in dire need of some baseplate and wax rims. Came into his office completely edentulous, and Doc ended up grabbing a what was it? You grabbed a impression of which material? Alginate. Cool. So we got an alginate, and now we're gonna just make some digital wax rims. Now on Exocad 3.3, there's this new module, and it's called basically digital wax rims. So we'll get into it. I'm gonna enter Doc over here as a client. And then new, and then our patient name, we'll just mark him as what's his initials? RM. Patient RM, and I am the designer. You can mark your designer in here, so we'll do Johnny. If you don't have it, it's just for organization. And then now in Exocad, we have the default work parameters. So if we click on one tooth in our database, we can tell the software what we're designing. So there's many things that you can design, right? There's crowns, there's partials, there's bite splints, and dentures. But what we're looking for today is in the full denture module. And we're going to say we're going to be printing the base and the teeth. And down here in 3.3, the new version, we have design bite template question mark. Yes, we would like to design a bite template. It's important that we click that because then we will just be making a full denture, which will not be good. So when we click that, it's a single or double. I believe it's a double, so we'll mark it double. And now both arches are now prompted for that workflow. So we can't hit design yet because it's grayed out, and it's grayed out because we haven't saved. So if we go to this top left corner on this database, we're basically telling Exocad we're ready to start designing. Save this patient. And now that we've saved this patient, if you hit this Open Explorer button, you now have a patient-specific folder. And you can see the dental project, which is associated with your database, and then the screenshot of what we just entered, right? So now I have to take my scans that I downloaded, Doc sent me, and I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to paste them from my downloads right here. Right click copy, or you can hit Control C, that will copy, and then you can paste by right click paste or Control V. Right, so two different ways to copy and paste. I believe there's one more. If you go right here, you can copy and paste upon copying right there. So there's three ways to copy and paste. So now that our scans are in here, the Exocad database will show me a little 3D preview in the bottom left corner. And this preview I'll be able to use just to check out the data initially. So it looks like we have two alginate impressions that need some inverting of data, and then some digital mounting, and then the designing of the bases and everything. So we can't do that in here because we are in the EXO icon. We need to launch the CAD. So to launch the CAD and actually design, we have to click design, and that will launch the design software. All right, cool. So in the top left corner of launching the design software, it says upper jaw, low jaw scan. So we're going to load up the upper. And then on the lower jaw, load jaw scan, we have to load up that mandible. It will tell you at the top left corner what it wants you to upload. So you're never lost when initially launching scans. The software is kind of telling you what it needs. So it's asking for a bite rim. We don't have one, so I could just hit X. Okay, and just move along. We're making a bite rim. So this is scan data orientation, and this is where we tell Exocad what surface is facing up at us. But the issue with our data here right now is we have them, they're not mounted, and this data needs to be cleaned up and inverted. So before I even do anything, I have to go right into expert mode. So when I go right into expert mode, I can then now have purple space, I call it. So purple space allows us to do whatever tool whenever we want. So we can right click on the background and we can get editing tools for our data. Now it's kind of hard to do that when you're pretty new to Exocad. You're used to maybe being in wizard mode. So wizard mode is a mode that allows you to hit next, 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 and it'll prompt you to do what you need to do. But when your data is not digitally prepared for that, workflow with ease with wizard, then we have to jump into expert in order to edit it. So those are the two different modes there, expert mode and wizard mode. It's definitely a good thing to talk about. So with expert, I have to right click on the data and then hit 3D data editor. So that will allow me to trim my data. So I'm left clicking and holding with select through in this button, and that's creating a straight edge because I make an arc and then that orange line then goes to our data, and when I click once, it'll turn orange, and that's signifying that I've selected it and I want to trim it. So I'm just going around the border and releasing any of this data that's kind of overhanging and it's too much, right? Because we got to clean this up and take it to the digital model trimmer, right? So now I'm going to hit delete, and we have a much cleaner situation to work with, but I'm still bothered by how this data is how it is. It's got to be inverted. So inverting is really important when you scan impressions because it's only scanning this positive surface, right? But when we got to design it digitally, we got to pour it digitally. So we got to right click on the background, hit show triangle orientation, and that will make us show the software what's positive and negative marked right now. So red means it's negative, and the regular coloring means it's positive. But now I'm going to hit right click invert, and that's going to invert the data. And now we have our scan in the positive orientation that we need. Okay, and I still have some posterior data that should get trimmed off here. It's a little over flashing in the back. All right. So now I have to edit the lower data as well. So you can turn on the lower arch here, but the lower arch is totally in a weird orientation. We'll get into that after we've inverted the data. So we'll now go to right click 3D scan data editor on the lower arch. And we got to view this data here. And then I'm going to trim. So I like making an arc and then using the straight edge to my advantage. Now, if you need to rotate your data, it's important to rotate and get into the view that you need to trim. So right-clicking and rotating is not something to be overlooked. It could be a whole video, but we're just focusing on the wax rims today. So let's delete that data. And when I click delete there, it cleans it up. And we have a lot of overhang here, so it's really important to make sure you don't have overhang. When you have overhang, then your fit gets messed with because it's messing with that extension area of how that data blocks out. When you have overhang, your data blocks out a little weird. Because we do have to block out undercuts in some situations. And the software, when creating the base bottom, will think that the overhang is an undercut, right? So we don't want that. That's why we need to clean up any overhang like this. Because it could be essentially looked at as an undercut. All right. So now that the data is pretty much cleaned up, I'm going to right click on the background, use show triangle orientation in 3D scan data editor, and then right click and hit invert triangle orientation. So now that it's inverted, we've got our data digitally cleaned up, but now we have to digitally mount it and use our measurements of dentures to get it in somewhat of a close situation. So if we right click on the background in expert mode again, we're going to hit correct jaw scan relation. So when we're correcting jaw scan relation, we can right click and rotate. and move freely. I like to use move freely on both so I can get one arch in the proper orientation. Now I'm specifically focusing on this upper one because this lower it seemed like was facing up towards me because I was working on that lower arch. But now I'm just floating this upper into position. Now if you could turn off your color texture on the POI, it might help me view these ridges, right? So I want to look at these ridges. Now it kind of looks like this lower is a little wider than this upper ridge. So we might have the posterior a little farther out. But we don't exactly know where we are. We have to use our measurements. So we got to measure somehow, and there's a couple measurement tools. So we have cut view right here. We can bring this plane across our scans, and it'll do a sectional view in between our data. And if we left click on that plane, we can see it's locked. And when it's locked, then in our cut view grid, I can zoom out and measure. So I'm at about a 33 vestibule to vestibule, 33 to 35 in this anterior section. Now if I slide this over to the posterior, let's see where we're at. We're at around like a 36. So we're somewhere in the range. We want to be between 35 to 40. That's the range we want to be in for a dual arch VDO in the vestibule measuring. 35 to 40 when I measure these two ridges. Now you can use your denture base rim measurements, 18 and 22, right? But that's for a single arch. So if you're going to do double, you'll be somewhere around like 40. But for some patients, 40 is a little too much. Now, you know, you don't want to have too much vertical height on these people. But you can always remove, which is the best part on that appointment. Dr. Omid could definitely talk about his experience when he's using these rims. So now when I got this pretty much where I like it. Like I kind of set it very easily, it looked like for me, and I didn't purposely seem for it to look like it was easy. But you do have to rotate it around with control and make sure to get it in that right spot. So now that our scans are now digitally mounted somewhat in a guesstimated place, we can leave our data preparation tools. So we can go right back to wizard mode now, and we can start where we began, right? So this is wizard, and wizard's just going to have us click through all the steps to complete the denture base. So the data preparation though is very important. So scan data orientation, we need to tell the data the occlusal view is seen and looking at us. So that is this view, and we'll hit next. Now after that, I have to mark an occlusal plane. Now I don't have anywhere to really mark, so I'm going to hit by 3 points. I'm going to just do the tissue scan, right? Left, right, and center. So I clicked on the left side, the right side, and the center, and I'm going to hit apply here. Now that's going to create a plane on this ridge. Now that I have a plane made, I can move this plane down with these arrows. So if I go negative, we're going down, right? And if I hit apply, you'll see the plane move down. So I just want to get this plane nice in center in the middle between the two. So if we want to measure with our cut view and find the center, so let's find the center. So half of 22 would be about 11, right? So we are at 11 almost. So if I go down to 11, then we are in the center of the two scans, right? Now I do see this left side's a little lower, so I want to unlock this left side, and that'll allow us to raise this up just a little bit to make our plane a little more even. Okay, so now I'm going to hit OK and then move on to the next step, and we have to mark our incisal papilla. So I'm going to click that and then hit next. And then now we have our maxillary tuberosities. I'm going to mark left and right. You don't have to worry about it being in the right spot. Exocad will automatically find the right and the left. And then we have our center plane, median plane. Ooh. So if you hit control, you can rotate it, but you have to do it on the scan itself. So we'll go here, And I want to align it up with my maxillary frenum as well as the papilla and the palatal suture. So those are our three references I'm looking for with that median plane. And then our position of our first rugae lateral area. So we have right here first rugae, and I would assume the other one's right over here. The data kind of got a little weird there. And then we'll hit next. On the lower arch, we have this knife ridge here. So I'm going to click here and here. It's about where I see it at. Then we'll hit next. And now we have our retromolar pads all the way up here. And we'll mark that. So ridge midline, I'm going to make sure that's right in the center of the ridge, right? We'll hit OK. And now we've completed that model analysis. So the next step in the Exocad would be part of our workflow. This is the base bottom. So this is how it's going to fit on your scan. So if that alginate was really good alginate and we got good suction on that, I don't want to change or alter that fit. But if there was too many undercuts, we would want to block that out. So that's all. This is what this software part does. I like turning my offset down to 0. So I have a direct fit of whatever the impression was. And then we'll hit apply. 0 and 0.2. 0.02 is like a hair, so it really doesn't matter, or 0.03, but I do like to go down to 0, so I have the true fit of what that impression was. Because if that impression was perfect, I don't want to alter that. Now, do you see anywhere that's maroon? It'll block it out, but we have a negative angle of 30, so negative angle of 30 is going to allow a lot of undercuts allowed. So allow undercuts to 0.5, because typically on these patients we don't have a ton of undercuts. We want to grab as much as we can, or any desired undercuts. And that's where this initial appointment is for, figuring this out with these wax rims that we're going to provide. So now this base bottom is done. This is our cookie cutter. We're going to now mark the perimeter of this denture base. And I'm going to turn on my jaw scan in our show hide tab, right? So when I slide that on, it'll show our object. Remember we had a PLY, so we do have color, but the color was just an alginate color. I do like this stone model view. It's just monochromatic tan. And the monochromatic tan allows me to view these, just these anatomy features on this ridge a little easier, because I want to be able to mark this perimeter of this border of this denture base very accurately, but it's easier to look at it in this monochromatic view. So I just want to go to the vestibule's deepest part of the connected tissue, and then around the frenum I want to go around that. And then if I see any of our muscle areas, I'm going to relieve it. And then I'm going to go around the maxillary tuberosity and then wrap back around in the posterior. And once we find that initial dot, I'm going to double click and it's going to fuse the spline. Okay. Now if you see anywhere you want to adjust, you're totally able to do that. Just click and drag your dot and then hit reapply. Sometimes it takes me a couple times to view it to actually see what I'm looking at, and after generating the pink here of that base, it allows us to view it a little easier as well. Cool. So now we'll hit next. And it's going to move us onto the lower ridge. So we'll do this. I'm going to mark the posterior retromolar pad, and then I'm going to start wrapping around. So now when I have this base bottom on, it's hard to see because of the color. So I want to turn this jaw scan on so I can view my anatomy a little better here on this ridge. So I want to take this over here because lingually it was probably trouble to capture some sort of ridge on this 95-year-old patient. I imagine all this bone is gone. If I were to look at the CT, so he's got a really small ridge, and so if we need to get anything and everything we can on this lower. So I'm going to just make sure to turn that jaw scan on so I can see the anatomy so I have an easier time marking this. It's all about the visuals so you can see how it looks and all this anatomy. So back here, this got cut off. I'm sure we can add material to the denture base, like curable, right? And just build that back up is something I would do if I saw something like that. You can add a light curable and cure it right here, light curable putty, even pink, whatever color. Any composite that you can mold in that back, just fill that in just so you get that retro molar pad a little bit more. And then we'll go around this vestibule here. And we can always remove from this base too. Just trim it down with our burr afterwards. We have to see how it is chair side and go from there. So I'm really looking forward to the feedback on that. All right. And then this pad back here is looking pretty good. And then I will fuse it by double clicking on that last dot and it'll fuse. Now if I see something I don't like, I'm going to adjust it. So our virtual wax up bottom got cut off here. So that's why our jaw scan didn't extend there. So it's something to look at when we have our overhang, right? So our overhang didn't even include there, which is fine. We got most of that pad back there. So once I hit OK on that, it's going to have me hit, oh, I don't like this back part. It's not going to be good. Let's just get this on the virtual wax up bottom or the base bottom, right? Once it's on the base bottom, this is your cookie cutter, so it's important to keep it on what's going to cut the intaglio, because that's how it's going to look after you cut it. So we'll hit next on that. And now we get these occlusal rims. So with these occlusal rims, you can preview a merge result, which is helpful to see what that's going to look like. But we're going to resume the design. We have to make sure to get this on the ridge, right? And I can turn off and on these. It's on auto hide, which I believe is super nice for this. And I want to be able to get this on the ridge on both arches. So the upper, I know it's a little more narrow than the lower, which is okay. So it's more important to make sure it's good for the lower arch, but I do want to extend this in the back for the lower, right? So I'm gonna focus on the lower first and make sure it extends on the ridge where it needs to be. I'm gonna bring it in a little bit so it's not hanging off. And then we can take a look at it, what it looks like on the upper. So on the upper, it looks a little strange because we're running out of room back there. So I'm going to have to narrow it. Some of these cases are tough when it's very narrow in the back on the upper. Almost like a class 3 case. And we don't need that far posterior. Because we need to get this initial record. And you can adjust these dots just so you can have it how you like it. You can also adjust the wall angle. So if you want to taper that angle in, you can. But let's preview the merge result. It'll look something like this. And then I do an offset for wax. So I always like to just offset this about like 2.5. So Doc can put some wax in between here. And when he puts some wax in between here, it'll turn out to be a super nice space for him to adjust in between. And I'm just going to notch the posterior here so it sticks on this plastic that he's going to print. Okay. Man, I really want to balance this a little better. This upper is just so narrow. It could have been my mounting, but we'll find out eventually soon. So now that we have this, we have the preview merge part template. I can smooth this if I need and adjust this. So I'm going to make sure I smooth this border here. I can thicken up the denture base border here with adding. So adding right here, smoothing here. This is your freeform tool. In freeform, you have add, remove, smooth, flatten. In some areas, I want to smooth this rim because I think it looks a little weird, right? Just because of how the patients got a little weird of a, they're kind of a class 3 in the posterior. And I just want to make that transition super nice. Right, and if you can add some areas just to make it less aggressive, you can do that as well. So now you can turn your jaw scans on and you can see how it's going to adapt and look, right? And your base bottom is the cutter for that. So if you see anything hanging off in the back, you can remove that. Anything hanging off the ledge. See, our borders are very free flowing, so we can kind of train the roll. It's important to train a roll in a situation like this because you're just starting out with nothing and you gotta find the video and CR. So we're just going to add to that roll. I also like adding to the roll with this cylinder. And it's just to bulk these up. So if he needs to do another wash inside of these base plates, he can, and it'll be easy for him. All right, add, remove, smooth, flatten. Now we have that space for the wax in between, and then it'll merge the design here. I know there's no notches in between here, so we can either freeform the merged, or we could go back and we can pull a little notch here. So like, I want to make sure that it'll bond in here nice. So I'm going to just mark, remove a little square. Oh, let me, never mind. Maybe in freeform merge restorations, I can remove a little notch. It's not necessary. You can still get wax to stick on these, but always kind of just serrating these will allow it to stick a little better. So maybe if I subtract so attachment, subtract, and then we can go over to parametric design, extrusion, and maybe I can subtract a little cube here. And I'm going to increase the width, the angle, and the height, total height, so that the wax is easy for him to add into this. So I'll do this. Subtract, cut on gingiva, apply. So it only did it to the lower, not the upper, unfortunately. And then we'll apply it to the upper. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So that's nice and serrated to add some wax just for retention to hold that on to the base there. There's many other ways you could do this. You can also freeform and mark it, but I feel like this is the easiest and cleanest with the STL subtraction. Now if I have some excess over here, I can recut it, right? So I'll just bring this object over here and recut it. So I'll just click on the object. I'll just make sure it's sticking out this way and then hit apply. So it went all the way through now. And then same with this one here. Apply. Very good. So now when he puts his wax on these rims, it'll have a point where he can push in and it'll sit in there and have some retention and hold on to that for a while. So now when we hit next, we'll hit yes. And now this is merged and save, and we have our digital wax rims here. And Doc's gonna print this out. And I'm gonna show you where the STL is located. When we hit done, it saved your scene file. And then also if you go to Open Explorer, you can look at your two STLs are right here. So we're going to throw this on the printer, either the Sprint Ray, the Exocad, whatever. You can use any biocompatible material, and you're just going to put wax right on top of those Occlusal rims there. Okay? And that's how you make digital wax rims in Exocad 3.3.